Hello everyone. A few days ago, someone reached out to me on Twitter and shared this nice dribble design with me. It is for an NFT marketplace mobile application that someone has created. It's a very nice design. So someone asked me on the first page, we can see there are all these slanted views, how we can do this in .NET MAUI. So I looked into this and turns out it is pretty easy to do. By the way, I'm not going to be doing this whole thing. Only I'm going to be working on the first screen, which is that main window, this window, where you have this scrolling effect, which is slanted. So this NFT marketplace mobile application is available on Dribble by a artist named Bogdan Felin. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. It's a very amazing design, nice design, and luckily for us, he has shared the full sources for a Figma file, or I forgot whether it was a sketch file. Yeah, it's Figma file. He has shared it for us to download. So I downloaded this source images, and these are the ones I'm going to use in my application. So let me go back to Visual Studio, and we have a blank Visual Studio project that I have created. Nothing fancy going on. There are just a couple of things which I have done to start with. One is I have brought in a couple of fonts. So I'm using ATIP Display Bold and ATIP Display Regular font. So these are the fonts that we will be using for our application. And then the images which are provided to us as part of that source repository, I have taken those 18 images and I have put them in my images folder. Other than that, this application is plain vanilla .NET MAUI file new project. There is nothing fancy going on over here. So it's the typical .NET MAUI application. So I'm going to use this as a base. So the very first thing I'm going to do, since I have already brought in the fonts, I'm going to go to my MAUI program and I'm going to replace these fonts with my own fonts. So over here, these are the built-in font registration. I'm going to replace that with the display bold and the display regular fonts, and I'm going to give them the name bold font and regular font. This is step number 1. Step number 2 is I'm going to go to my app.xaml page, and I do not want to use any of the styles which are provided to me out of the box. So I'm going to clean them up. Then I'm going to go to my app.xaml.cs, and since I do not like to use app shell, plus in this application or this demo there is no need for an app shell, I'm simply going to replace it with my main page. So now if I run the application, nothing will change for you. The application will run as is. The only thing is maybe the styles may go for a toss here or there. Otherwise, it's the same application. You can see I just removed the styles. So let us close this. We do not need any of this. Let's go to our main page. In the main page, I'm going to remove everything from this page, and I'm going to clean it up a bit so that it looks nicer for me to read. So this is the content page that we have. So we are going to set up something over here. To start with, I'm going to bring in a grid. I'm going to define a grid over here. It's a simple grid. I'm just saying that ignore the safe area for now. So it is going to take the full screen, which is the top status bar as well as the bottom home indicator handler, that area. So it is going to take up the full screen, and I'm splitting it up into 4 different rows. The first row is 590 points. Then the next one is auto. The last one is 76 points. And in between, I'm taking up everything. So the first row is where we are going to be displaying those images in the row, and we are going to make them look slanted. Then the second one is where I'm going to have a header. The third one where I will put some information, and the last one is the button. So right now, if I run this, you will see everything is cleaned up. There is nothing. I forgot to clean up the code which was there in my main page.xaml.cs. So let's run this and see it in action. You will see an empty screen. Right. So here we have got an empty screen. Now one of the things that I'm going to do is, before I start, I'm going to define some resources which I'm going to make use of. So for the grids, what I want to do, I want to make sure that it has no padding, no row spacing, no margins. It is filling up the space and everything. And since I will be using a lot of grids in this page, the best is to define these resources over here. So I'm going to define my grid resources over here. So here is my grid style, and I'm just saying target type is grid. I'm not giving it a key, which means any grid including this is going to have a padding of 0, margin of 0, row spacing 0, column spacing 0. It is going to vertically and horizontally fill the whole screen, and the background color is going to be transparent. So let's come back down and let's start adding some information. Let me run this so that we can see this with the beauty of hot reload, if it works for me. I have seen sometimes it is not very lucky for me, but anyways, let's try. So let's try to add the header first. So for the header, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to define a label. So the label is, I'm going to put it in grid row 1, which is the second row. I'm going to give it a text, discover NFT collection. Font family is bold font. I'm giving it a text color, setting the horizontal text alignment and the horizontal alignment of this text object to, or this label to be center, setting the font, some margins and some line height. Let me save this and see if we are lucky. Yes, it works for us luckily. So we can see discover NFT collections as the header. Next is we are going to display some information. Same thing I'm going to do, nothing fancy. In the second row, or rather the third row, in this case, I'm going to put in another label with the text explore top collections. This time I'm going to be using regular font with different size, different margins, different text colors, and I'm going to set it to horizontally centered but vertically start, and the same line height of 1.2. So now you can see we have got discover NFT collections and explore top collections. This is the text that we put in a slightly lighter color. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to be adding a button over here. So let me put in a button. It's simply a button taking up the fourth row with the title or the text start exploring, filling up all the space. And you remember we have given it size of 76, or sorry, the height of 76. Let me minimize this. So it is going to take up all of the screen state vertically and horizontally in this row. And I'm setting the margin to be 24 from the bottom and 32 from the left and right. And I'm setting the font size. Let us see this in action. So this is how you can see this on the screen. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to define our main grid. If you remember, there were 3 or 4 rows that we had where we had all the images lined up and they were slanted. Now ideally these should be 3 or 4 separate, say, collection views, but for the time being what I'm going to do, I'm going to put everything inside of this as one grid, and I'll explain that to you why I am doing this. So we have got a grid, and so I have a grid within the grid which is taking up the first row of this height 590, and again I'm using the ignore safe area, so I take up all the screen state in the status bar as well. And this is where I'm defining some rows over here. So the first row is 137 points. This is where our first row will go. Then I have a spacing of 14, then another row of 137, spacing of 14, another row of 137, spacing of 14, and 137. So I'm going to display 4 different rows of images. And why I am doing it inside, Ideally, you may ask, I would have simply done this over here itself. Instead of 590, I would have done it there itself. But there is a reason which I'll explain later. So once I have this, what I'm going to do, I'm going to define 4 collection views inside this. So in row 0, I have a collection view. In row 2, I have a collection view, which is row 2 is 0, 1, 2 in the 137. For the collection view 3, I'm defining it in row number 5, and similarly row number 7 for the collection view 4. So this is where we are going to have our images displayed. Now what we need to do is we need to bind this to some source images. For this, let me actually go over here first and let me define some data points. So I can define 4 lists. I'm going to call them image list 1, 2, 3, 4. These are simple lists of strings, and the strings being the URLs or the, if I go to the images, the names of the images, which is img01.png, img02.png, and so on. Now with this in mind, what I can do, I can simply go and say this dot say binding context is this, so it is bound to these, and I can come back over here to my collection and I can say item source is equal to binding image list 1. For my collection list 2, I can bind it to binding list 2. For the third row, I can bind it to 3 and 4. So I'm just binding this to these image lists. Right now, these image lists are empty. There is nothing in this image list. Okay, so how do we display something over here right now? Let me populate some data for this first of all. So maybe what I can do is in the constructor, or rather I would create a new function. Let me create a new function, generate data, and let me bring in another private variable over here, which is a private list of string all images, and I'll tell you why I'm using this. So initially, to start with, I'm saying all images is equal to an empty list, and then for I'm running a loop from 1 to 18 because I have 18 images, and I'm adding img01.png, img02.png, and so on. So I am adding this over here. Now at the moment, if I just run the application, let me stop the application and let me run this. Let's see, what do you see? By the way, we have not formatted our list whatsoever as of now. So nothing is being shown over here. So let me actually go and define some style. So you saw, since we have 4 collection views, ideally the way it is to be done is this way, right? So I will say item template, collection view dot item template. Okay, inside I'll have a data template, and then I will define everything over here, and I'll have to do this 4 times. Now, for those of you who know me, I like to work with minimalistic code, so I am not in favor of defining this whole piece of code over here. Just to let you know what it is going to look like, basically it should be having a list of images over here. Okay, so let's put this here. Let me clean it up. So this is what we will have as an image, and we will need to do the same thing everywhere. All I'm doing over here, I'm just displaying an image, binding it to the source, setting the aspect to aspect fill, filling up the horizontal and the vertical area. I'm setting the width and height of this image to 137, and then I am clipping the image with a radius of 16 on the edges. Now once I have done this, another thing I will need to do is on the item layout template, I will also need to define that I want the horizontal layout. But this is too much work. So rather what I will do is something like this. I will leave this clean, and since on this page I only have 4 collection views with the same layout, I'm going to define them over here. So all I can do this, first of all, this whole data template I can define over here with a key. So I can say data template is, and giving it a key data template, and the same code that you saw, it's an image which is bound to the source with the height and width of 137 with rounded clipped rounded corners with the radius of 16. Now once I have defined this data template, I can also define a common style for my collection views. So this common style of collection view is going to apply to all 4 of them. So here I'm just setting the margin to 0, item sizing strategy to measure first item so that it is optimized, because all my items are of the same size, so I don't need to measure each and every item. Filling up the space horizontally and vertically, background color to transparent. I don't want to see the vertical and horizontal scroll bars, so I'm setting them to never. I don't want to select anything because this is not the purpose for that. If you want to select something and navigate to a second page, then you should set it to single or multiple depending on your requirements. And here is where I'm defining my item template to this image template. So this is the image template which I defined, and I'm defining it over here, the image template. And then I'm setting that I'm setting the item layout property to be a linear items layout. Orientation is horizontal and item spacing is 14. So keeping this whole code, this visual code clean, all these 4 collection views are going to apply this style and going to use this data template. Now before I do, let me do something. Let me actually, just to demonstrate to you, let me say image list. Okay, one thing that we should have done is we should generate this in our constructor. Generate data, and then I can say image list 1 is equal to all images, and I can do the same for my second and third and fourth collections. So let me run this and show you what happens right now. So here you go. We have got 4 collection views, all of them showing the same data. So first thing that we need to do is we need to randomize this data. So let me declare a random variable, a variable to hold my random seed. So I'm just declaring a variable called RND, new random. This is what I'm going to use as my seed. And then let me actually go and define a helper function for me. Let's clean this up. Let me define a helper function. So I'm just defining a function randomize, which takes a list of something as the source, and then it returns the randomized version of it. So it orders by this randomizer, this seed that we have created over here, RND. So all it is doing is it is just randomizing it and it is returning this list. Now with this function in place, what I can do is I can say randomize. In fact, let's copy paste this for all of them. Oops, something went wrong. Here you go. So I'm just randomizing this And now I'm going to run the code again. This time around, what you will see, at least the images will be randomized. So you see now all these images are randomized. So from these 18 images, we are showing different images. So the other thing is we need to apply we need to make a slanted view out of it. So let's go back to over here in our grid, and this is the reason, if you remember, when I said that I am going to keep all of this in one grid rather than applying the transformations to each and every collection view. So here what I can do is I can say rotation equals to, maybe I want to rotate it by 10 degrees, and I'm going to give it a margin of I don't know, let's say -60, 0. Yeah, let's say -60, 0. So -60 on the left and right, and 0 from the top and bottom. So let me run this now. Now you will see at least that it is going to be rotated. So you see over here, now they are rotated. But we see a problem over here. It is still overflowing into the bottom, and over here, since we rotated it, it is going to it's showing us an empty space. So let us fix this. So to fix the bottom part, at least this bottom part, what I'm going to do, I'm going to apply outside my grid, I'm going to apply a box view which is filling up the 3 rows. So row number 2, 3 and 4, it is spanning 3 rows starting from row number 2, and I'm setting the background color to white. So now if I save this, you see at least that problem has disappeared. And the other thing that you saw in the actual video, that there are some nice gradients over here that we can apply. So for this, I'm going to apply some top and bottom gradients. Let me just bring in the code. So outside of this grid, I'm going to apply the gradients. So I'm going to apply it to my row 0, and why is it giving me an error? Yeah, sorry. I think the problem was, since the hot reload was running, it was not able to figure out what these gradient stops are. So what we are doing, we are just applying or putting in a couple of box views. So both of them I'm putting on in the row number 0, the first row, which is encompassing this whole grid. And what I'm doing for the first one, I'm horizontally filling it, but vertically I'm putting it on the start only with the height request of 90. And for the second one, the same thing, the only difference being that the vertical options, or it is starting from the end. And then inside I'm putting a background for this box view. I'm using the linear gradient brush, going from say full white to transparent, and in the other one going from transparent to full white, since I have reversed it. So now let me run this and let us see this in action. So here you go. So now we have nice gradients at the top and the bottom, which is going from here. In this case, it is going from transparent to white. In this case, it is going from white to transparent. And we have this nice effect over here. So that's it for this video. I hope you like this. If you want to see more, stay tuned. Please consider subscribing to the channel. and be notified when new videos are posted on .NET MAUI. Thank you everyone. See you next time.